guess the most important thing that I look at the beginning, depending on if I'm taking landscape or if I'm shooting on the street, there's a difference really in a way, but you always have to consider the light. Where is the light coming from? How is it going to affect the photograph? That, I think, is the most important thing that I pay attention to. Is there another light source that's going to distort the whole thing? You have to analyze. Of course, you look at composition. When I'm photographing on the street, I used to shoot in the beginning with a zoom lens, because then I could sort of hide behind the corner and get the picture and not really be involved. Over the years, I learned that that's not what you do. You use the shortest wide-angle lens that you can, and you get in to your subject. And you frame it. I always kind of like to have something a little bit in the foreground, and then that draws you back into, and it's something that it didn't happen right away. I had to learn it and think about it, and I mean, I look at the photographs that have been successful for me, and then I think of the probably 7,000 or more, 20,000 that weren't. So, but you begin after a while, you learn to analyze. It's different with a landscape photographer who's going to sit up with a tripod and stay in a position for a long time, waiting for the light, waiting for the clouds, waiting for things to shift. If you're on the street, you almost have to make a judgment immediately. You just have to shoot. And often I will bracket, which means I'll take 3 shots of the same thing, maybe at different exposures, so that I can, in the 3, get one that I like. It's hard, but for me, it's that critical moment that you're trying to capture. And that's sort of where I have been taught over the years. Just one of the things I guess I have done for a long time too, I have to think, is I find a background on the street and I wait for the subject to come to me. If it's an interesting background, something that you like, that's balanced, has good light, if you sit there for a long time, something's going to happen. And often it comes boom, 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 that something happens. But patience, I guess, is another thing you have to learn. So I think much of my photography was travel inspired. I would say I'm probably either a street photographer, travel photographer. I love the urban setting. New York, I love New York. I get lost in New York on the streets. Rarely do I get accosted by someone yelling at me, but it has happened. And just the human environment, I guess, whether it's in this country or somewhere else. And so I'm getting now to the point where I can't really, even if I could travel, I can't, of course, because of COVID. Well, that's again goes back to Cuba. And, you know, anybody who's been to Cuba knows how many cars, the cars, they're fabulous. And everybody shoots the cars. So the first year, I didn't know anybody who'd been to Cuba. And so my cars were fabulous, just, you know, done like this. And then more and more people going and more cars were coming out. And I thought, how can I make my cars more interesting? And a lot of my life has been serendipity, I've decided. I took a class, again, a Western class in Scottsdale, and one of the women there told me about this printer in Scottsdale. It's a massive printing corporation, and they print on all kinds of stuff. And mostly it's big companies. They do huge corporate business. And then they took me, and I worked with a young man there, and we started printing my Cuba cars on the metal. And it's not just take the photograph and plop it down, which is what I thought you could just do, but no. Anything that you want to be white in your photograph. Unless you work with it in Photoshop and separate it out, will just come out to be metal colored. So it was a lot of selecting things and taking the photograph apart and then putting it back together again and then putting it on the metal. And there's a Cubicar in here that I put out for you to see. And what happens is the bumpers really become chrome and the whole piece becomes dimensional. And so it was really a fun thing to do. We had a really good time. And I had a show at Phillips, I guess maybe, I can't remember, maybe it was 3 years ago, that was all on my Cuba work. And the cars, I had about 36 different cars that were featured, and people loved them because it was something different. And from that process of doing the cars, this is literally what happened. I had done hanging on the wall in there is the tenement, which I had just a grab shot in New York as the sun was setting. And I liked it, but I thought, I went to bed, and I guess I'd been thinking about it when I went to bed. I woke up literally in the middle of the night, and I thought, what if I could find somebody to put neon on the metal?